T.B.Photo X1.5 TFX, and welcome back to another video. Well, lenses, have they gotten better or have it even gone in reverse, quality wise? Well, in this program it's gonna be a little bit about this. In this episode, a tall black cylinder with a golden ring, example images taken with said black cylinder with golden ring, tidbits from an autumn walk throughout the botanical garden. My long-winded opinion on what is what with this lens, and I'm still sitting in a chair. Yes, and welcome back. Well, as you saw in the intro, this one is going to be about the classic, the Nikkor ED 300mm f4.5. Well, to give it its correct title, I had to write this down because, yeah, I don't think there are many cars even today with this extreme extreme name. Well, it's the Nikkor 300mm f4.5 EDIFAIS. Well, say that 3 times fast. But anyway, well, I've actually gotten a little bit of the information, and all the information that I've gotten about this lens will be in the comment section, or rather in the information section below. So yeah, well, the majority I've gotten from Nikon's own website, Nikon History, and the majority is actually from that lens aficionado Ken Rockwell's website, so they're all linked in the description below. So yeah, a little bit of the general information about this lens. Well, it has a minimum focus distance of 2.5 meters, a maximum aperture of 4.5, and a minimum of 32, f32 that is. And yeah, one thing that is a little bit interesting with this is that the production run of this lens is quite astonishing. It went from 1978 till 1999. Yeah, Prince reference. But anyway, yeah, a very long span of production for one particular lens. And yeah, the optics of this lens is basically that it is a extremely low element count. It is 7 elements, and they are divided into 6 groups. And furthermore, it also has 9, unfortunately, straight diaphragm blades or aperture blades, which means that when you get the bokeh balls or bokeh orbs in the out of focus areas of this lens, you will have a little bit of sharp edges to it. It will not be as smooth as a equivalent lens with rounded aperture blades. But what are you gonna do? Also, to just break down a little bit of the acronyms used in the naming of this lens. Well, let's begin with ED. ED is a acronym that Nikon uses for extra low dispersion, which is a glass element that was prevalent in these lenses, and that would actually limit the chromatic aberration and keep it to a minimum. And this is one of the first lenses with it, as you can see with this golden ring. We'll have some B-roll of that, fortunately. But anyway, the ED glass would make it so that the chromatic aberration would be kept to a minimum. And then after that we have the IF acronym, and that basically stands for internal focusing. And here's a little bit of a good thing to know. Well, this lens was made in a lot of different makes and models, and as a lot of other YouTube photography channels have already pointed out times plenty, is that this is the one to get, the IF version, which stands for internal focusing, which means that well, the way you can distinguish this one from the rest of the pack is that it has the ED acronym, the golden yellow ring on it, and that the focusing is so smooth that you can do it with one finger. it is a joy to use when it comes to focusing manually this lens because of that feature. So that's a good point to drive home. Well, what else? Well, AIS, it is one of the AI lenses, so which is when you have the big aperture numbers here and the smaller aperture numbers down here, and that the fork construction here has some, it's milled out, so it's not completely solid. So yeah, those are a little bit, what else can you say about the features of this lens that haven't been talked about before by other people? Well, it has the removable tripod collar. It's just to unscrew it and it will hinge off the lens. Also, another good feature is a full metal built-in lens hood. So mine has a skylight filter on it from the previous owner, and it's a 72mm metal lens thread on this lens. So, what is my verdict of this lens? My criteria? Well, that's what we're gonna go through now. So, time for a summary. Well, ease of use. Well, this is a manual focus lens only, which means that it demands a little bit more of the photographer in question that uses it. So, if you are down with manual focus and manual aperture control, then you should not have any trouble at all to use this lens to its fullest potential. But since we are a bit of a crowd now that have grown up and are used to autofocus in all its shapes and forms, well, I can only give it a good rating. Fast glass. Well, this lens again is a little bit of, what can we say, middle of the road, since it's a native fastest aperture f4.5. Well, we know that there are different lens models out there on the market today that are quite a bit faster. There are even the contemporary with this one, fabled 300mm f2.8, but in that case the price tag also goes up quite a bit. But it doesn't hold it back any way, shape or form optically, so as fast glass, a good, solid, good rating. Versatility. Well, this lens is a very long telefocus focal range, which limits a bit of the broadness of the usability, but that is a factor for any lens out there, no matter what focal length it is. But there is not really much point in sports action wildlife, well, not unless you are super fast using your fingers for manual focus. So it is plausible, but for me, this is more of a specific landscape and to get a little bit more of an artistic edge with bokeh and all that sort of things when it comes to the use of this lens. But yet again, a solid, very rock solid, good rating for versatility. Optics. Well, there is no question that the optical quality of this lens cannot be overstated. With the low element count and the introduction of the ED element and so on, makes this an extremely useful, interesting, colorful, the images that this lens can take in the hands of a professional or a serious amateur that really knows what he or she are doing. Well, there is yet again no limit to the possibilities of what this lens can produce creatively. So I can't give it anything less than excellent. Durability. Well, what else can you expect from a lens that is made in Japan, have that stamped on it? It was made in a production run that spanned from the late 1970s to the late 1990s, 1999 to be exact. Well, this is a tank in the word. It is all metal construction more or less, except for the glass parts, and it is something that I think will outlast the most of us if taken care of and used as intended. Well, that it goes without saying naturally, but build quality, durability, there is nothing to say other than another excellent. X factor. Well, for this lens, the X factor is actually the technology that went into making this model of lens. Well, the introduction of the ED glass element made specifically to counter chromatic aberration, the silky smooth internal focusing mechanism makes this really an interesting lens from an engineering standpoint. But well, the aesthetics and so on are a bit common for lenses of this vintage, so I'll give it a good rating, but that doesn't shy away from any way, shape or form that the technology that went into making this lens and what it produced with that technology is world class. Current eBay prices. Well, after a quick search on eBay internationally, I have found that for the time of this recording, the average prices of this lens goes from around 180 to 335 euros. And the majority of them, once again, are listed from Japan, which means that depending on where you are in the world, there might be some customs fees and so on to add this, and this is also prices excluding shipping and handling. So yeah, those are actually, for the price of the lens itself, I would say is fairly decent, actually very good. As an investment, well, this lens is probably not the lens you invest in to try to make money out of in the long run, but rather something you invest in to invest in yourself as a photographer, because as stated, when this lens is handled properly, it can yield some really interesting results, and depending on skill level for you as a photographer, it will give you really cool images indeed. At least that's my opinion, which this entire segment is my opinion. Yes, and finally then, I need something to have as a baseline model. Well, when I try to test lenses nowadays, if they are a FX or classic lens that were made during the 35mm era, that means that they would be considered a FX lens nowadays, or full frame, and that's when this old workhorse comes into the picture, so to speak, and it's the Nikon D700, a 12 megapixel full frame camera that I've plugged in numerous videos in the past. But what I would like to say with this one is that it is a brilliant camera to show mostly uncropped, though you can do cropping of course in Lightroom and so on, but when you get to do test images, I would say that this is as good as any FX camera to use as a test bed. So how was it to go outside and use this lens? Well, for still objects, flowers and cityscapes and so on, and all these types of things that are stationary, well, then it's a breeze. Even though the autofocus is silky smooth, at least on my copy that I have here, and it works brilliantly. My copy has a little bit of cosmetic wear on it, nicks and dings and so on, but function-wise, it is a brilliant lens in its own right. So yeah, what I would say is a little bit of a caveat to notice about this lens is, I can't really show you here, but take my word for it. When you open the back lens cover and you're looking into it, if you're stopping it down to something like f16, you will actually see the aperture blades. Well, you will do that on any lens, but the special thing with this one is that the aperture blades are the most rare. They are actually rare of the rare element. So you actually have the last of the, 7 lens elements, and then you will have the aperture blades. So there actually is empty space behind the aperture blades and the F mount here. So you actually have exposed aperture blades on the very end of this, on the back of this lens, which is a little bit not cause for concern, but something to really have a little bit in mind, that you have a mechanical functionality that is exposed at the back. So yeah, that's a little bit of a caveat on that one. But what would I say is a modern day equivalent to this vintage lens, something that I can have that is similar but still more modern. Well, the modern equivalent, this is a lens that I have shown in many other videos. It's the, well, in this I also have to write down, even if it says here, I need to have it written down because the names of these lenses, some of them are insane. This is the Nikkor AFS VR Zoom Nikkor 70 to 300mm f4.5 to 5.6 G IFED, which, if we break it down again, it is it has vibration reduction, which is VR. It is a G series, which has no aperture control on the lens itself. It has internal focusing IF. It is an ED lens that has extra low dispersion glass elements, and so on and so forth. And it's a variable aperture. So while this at 300mm, which is here, isn't as fast as it's a little bit slower. It's a 5.6 and not a 4.5, so a little bit slower. But if I would say that this would be a baseline lens that others will have to measure up against, I would say that this, even though it is a prime lens, even though it has much lower element count, this one has a whole of 17 elements in 12 groups and two ED glass elements. This one has, as stated, let's see here, 7 elements, and they are in 6 groups, and one of them is an ED element. So there is a little bit of a difference here. So yeah, more elements, a little bit flatter image profile, but I would say that this would be my, what should we call it? This would be my baseline lens that others had to measure up against. So this one, brilliant. It was easy peasy, lemon squeezy to use. It is full metal construction, really high quality, and the prices of these lenses, yeah, you can always find a deal, but generally I think that the prices of these are incredibly good compared to what you get for your money. So bang for your buck with this lens, even though it might be a little bit, some people might call it ancient, some people might call it old-fashioned and so on, but when you look at the image quality that it can produce when coupled with a decent FX camera body, I am actually quite amazed at how good it actually is. So, but I think that would be all for me for this time and date. So, as always, this is Tobias Bergström from T.B.Photo X1.5 and I'd like to see you guys in the next video. And as always, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. So take care from now on. Bye.